That's going to come up today.
Button down collared shirt. Very,
Absolutely.
very.
My
very
wife
nice.
dressed me today.
Huh?
Welcome to an all-new episode of Work in Progress with John Lane and Will Barfield. This podcast explores leadership traits under stress with a special guest each week. We use a simple and accurate OAD assessment to identify key personality traits or superpowers, as well as the shadow side, kryptonite traits that appear when we're under stress. As always, we'll have some pod banter, shameless plugging, and we'll even let our guests talk for a bit. Of course, no humble brags. Welcome to the show.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another all-new issue of Work in Progress with John Lane and Will Barfield and special guest. Will, how are you?
I am well, sir. You look very dapper.
Oh, well, guess what day today is? Look, what are we all wearing?
This Thursday.
Close. You usually don't get that one right. It's sweater day.
It's sweater weather.
Yeah, I'm wearing a vest. You have whatever little thing you have on, and Olivia has got a beautiful sweater thingy. Hi, Olivia.
Hi. What you said to me could almost be perceived as a compliment, but not quite. But I'll take it as well.
It's getting there.
Maybe by this is what, show 12? 11, 12?
Yeah.
12? Maybe by show 24.
This is 12, yeah. Oh, someone has to do show 13. Who's that? Oh, I know who that is. That's next week.
We skipped that one like you do in the elevator.
Do
There's
we?
no 13
Okay.
forward.
All right. Well, we'll see. Will, do you have any banter, or do I have to carry the load?
Well, if you notice, viewers, if anyone aside from your mom and mine have watched previous episodes, we switched sides. So everything is all out of order today. John asked me a loaded question. He said, "You want to switch sides?" Which means I want to try something different. So yeah, I'll kick off the banner.
Nice.
What led to you wanting to switch it up today? You're wearing the sweater vest and making me sit over here.
I'm feeling randy. It's Thursday. Thursday's the new Friday.
You're mixing it up. Oh, it is. Yeah, I remember in college, Thursday was the beginning of the weekend. I don't act like that anymore, but
all right. Well, I have some stuff for us. One is we announced 2 weeks ago and 1 week ago that we were going to put all of our audio versions up, and I'm here to announce that I haven't done that yet.
Okay. I was expecting a big development there. You set that up great. I was ready.
Yeah. Thank you. And here's another one. Remember, one of us lost 2 recorded episodes in December. One of us is
Olivia's.
Yeah. Oh wait. I guess I froze. Go back again. Let's take 2. Will, do you remember? I have Tracy's webcam, I guess.
Yeah.
And then comedy, that's called callback. Do you remember one of us lost a couple of recorded episodes, maybe?
As I said when you froze, I remember that those episodes were lost, but that was a technical difficulty. It was not the fault of any of the humans on this screen.
That's exactly right.
In my opinion.
Well, today I had an appointment with their head of product marketing who wanted to interview me on product feedback. She was not ready for that conversation.
Ooh.
But it was very nice, and she's going to try again to recover them. Olivia, we'll get to you in a minute. Just Will and I haven't seen each other all week. So, and then last, Will, you'll be proud of me. Now I have to move. Now I'm in the way.
It's yeah.
Whoops. So we broke our record for how many quadrant builders did we have? And Will, why don't you welcome Olivia to the Architect Quad?
Yes, it's nice to have you in the Architect Club, Olivia. We have been on a streak of mostly upper right quadrant builders, and to have another architect in the mix with me and Ken. So you and I are going to have a lovely show today, whether John enjoys it or not.
That's true.
You know me well.
I'm just not gonna, through the magic of television, I'm back. And Will, this is where we kick off the show. And since we've switch swapped, Criss Cross it. You do it.
Kick off the show?
Yeah.
Well, okay. Hey, everybody. I'm Will Barfield.
And I'm John Lane.
And we are
a work in progress. That was pretty smooth. We're getting there. Olivia, you're coming in for some highly professional podcasting. Earlier on in the process, I would say a total mess. But Will, why don't you introduce our special guest today?
I would love to do that in the spirit of doing things differently. I will take care of that for this episode as well. Olivia, it's wonderful to have you here. Olivia and I have known one another for a while. She's also done some work with John over the course of the last year. But tell us a little bit more about you, please, professionally and otherwise.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Will and John. So both of you have worked with me in different capacities. I am currently the Director of Talent Management for Ask Bio. And so I spend my days focusing on recruitment, onboarding, engagement, diversity, equity, and inclusion, performance management, and learning and development. And so I often summarize that to people. I see employees through the entire employee life cycle, which is quite an adventure.
I don't know how you remembered all that.
I've said it many times.
Would you say, before we leave the slide, John, Olivia, would you categorize yourself as, a talent professional? Would you categorize yourself as a human resources professional with that encompassing talent? Sometimes, as you well know, HR and talent are in different silos.
So currently right now, I would say I'm an HR professional, but if I had to pick a term in the HR space to use, I love people and culture, because I think that's the two things that we should see more organizations put first.
Okay. Makes sense. And I bet we'll see that theme come up from you later in this show.
I know we will.
Absolutely. It definitely fits.
Yeah, and I'm going to say that you are unique for us for many reasons, because you are a unique person, but this is your third time through a leadership traits under stress. So we did it with Activate Good, we did it with RM Sherm live, and now here you are on a podcast. So we're getting a lot of miles out of you, so thank you very much. Okay.
Of course.
Well, I'm going to take the reins back. So anybody who's still listening or has heard us before understands that we're going to talk about leadership traits under stress. We get those leadership traits from the OAD survey. It's a 5-minute, easy to administer, easy to take, yet powerful results. And the results of those assessments come out looking like this. Will?
Olivia, how does it feel to have yourself reduced down to a 2-dimensional table?
Well, now that I've seen it a couple of times, a little bit better than the first time I saw it. But the first time I saw it, I was like, what does this mean?
Exactly. Well, I'm going to break it down for our audience. So the simplified version of this is you look at that little red line, which will point straight above your head. Yep. A little higher. Beautiful.
I can't. It cuts off.
Oh, yeah. See, it travels down. The little red line, anything to the right of that is dominant. Anything to the left of that is subordinate. And we look at 4 personality traits: assertiveness, extroversion, patience, and detail orientation. High is not good. Low is not bad. These are all just a spectrum of definitions. So Olivia is a higher A. So assertiveness is her most dominant trait. Her second most dominant trait is detail orientation. Detail orientation is a very interesting phrase, because it's not only about attention to detail, it's also about flexibility and delegation. And Olivia is high on that, and we'll get into it. And then her 2 subordinate traits are what we call stacked, E and P. It's extroversion and patience. I like to pay a lot of attention to P, patience, because it's not only are you patient or impatient, It's a level of urgency that you operate in, and also your ability to like change. So Olivia's case, I'll take care of that in edit. Olivia is a
live TV baby.
Yeah, live TV baby. That P is going to be a lot of urgency, but also very comfortable with change. And in a role like hers, that makes a lot of sense. But I'm almost done speaking. I'll just say, in OAD land, we plot people in very two-dimensional 2x2s. It's an imperfect way to do that, but it just allows us to summarize. And as you'll soon see, Olivia, in her quadrant, same as Will's, they're direct with high confidence. And that's how the communication style comes out. So, Will, let's break down the generic superpowers and kryptonites.
Love to do that, John. And, Olivia, I'm going to ask you something real quick here before we get into these, because there was such a gap in your A and your E. And I talked to Ken Rona about this when he was on the show. I would imagine that with that low level of extroversion, as compared and relative to the other things happening on your chart there, doing something like this with us, or having to present or speak, or just, having to deal with, the employees all day long, that given that you're probably much more of a natural introvert at rest, it probably takes a lot out of you.
Yeah, there's a high level of adaptability, and I tell people I end most days completely exhausted, and that's more because I've been adapting so much throughout the day that my home life is very different from my professional life because I use all that energy during the day at work.
But speaking of the energy that you expend at work and the superpowers that you put into play, this is the generic readout results you're going to get for someone who falls in the architect developer quadrant, like you and me, upper left. One here that we could touch on real briefly that stood out to you as highly accurate.
Yeah, I have to choose detail delegator because when John just said it's, someone who has attention to detail, but they also delegate the details. I think for me, I care a lot about the details, but I see the details as development opportunities for others. And so I'm often giving others the opportunity to participate in the details so that they get to feel like they're a part of something bigger than maybe they would be without having the opportunity to do some of those smaller things.
Love that.
Perfect. Look at that. Look how quickly he moved to kryptonite. All right. Generic again. You and I actually have exactly the same bullets. I have these same 6. For me, which one of these do you identify with immediately?
I have to go with the abrupt at times because I think 99% of the time you're going to get a really short answer from me. And it's going to be an answer that I give you very quickly. So you're going to ask me, should I do this or this? And I'm going to say, do this. And then I'm going to just expect you to keep moving with it. So sometimes the context gets lost, the narrative isn't there, or people don't feel like they get the time investment in something that to me just needs a quick answer and an action.
I can't wait to open that up later.
Yeah.
John, take over.
We just put this together, and this is really an on-ramp. And this will come up later, but Olivia was kind enough to put some of her own thoughts together.
Yes.
And we'll get to that part. But thank you for that, Olivia. Will, why don't you drill in here a little?
We will. We're going to spend a little bit more time on the next slide on the kryptonite than on the superpowers, Olivia. But, as you've ascended in your career as a professional, as you've, added more things to your plate as a volunteer and volunteer leader, there are superpowers that you utilize to help you be successful in those settings. You looked at your readout results. These are some comments that you sent us. Why don't you talk about, what you've stated here and why that's the case?
Yeah, so at a very high level, I chose fiercely independent because that to me is the self confidence piece.
Mm.
But I also felt like we should remind people that sometimes self confident people, fiercely independent people do still care about what others think. And so for me, I often am looking for validation from others, but people don't know to give that to me at times because they think I don't need it with this superpower. And so had to call that out there. When you talk about progressing professionally and also as a volunteer and a leader, I think that comes from the drive for results part of the superpower. And so oftentimes I find myself in roles for a short period of time before I'm promoted or moved to the next level or given more opportunity. And that's because I'm always looking for the action that's going to create results. And when people see those results, they want more of them.
Mm.
Great.
And
You know,
the third,
go ahead.
the third bullet point, regarding communication, I think could be a kryptonite or a superpower. That abrupt ability to clearly and concisely communicate things, but also focus on the action can come across as a positive or negative for some, but that action helps yield those results, which allows you to be more independent in the work that you do. So I think there's truly a connection to all of these superpowers, but I recognize that depending on the person I'm working with, these superpowers might be seen as kryptonite.
So I'm going to stay with this page. And I'm going to pull something from the generic. So, we talked about delegation. And you look at delegation as, developmental opportunity. Here we're talking about on this slide, communication in a very clear and concise manner with the goal of encouraging action, right? So I'm going to weave those two things together. You've got someone on your team and you are, trying to develop them and you're delegating some tasks down to them. You're communicating in a clear and concise manner. What is your patience level with, their speed to react and their delivery of quality results? You're delegating to develop, but where do you end up, when in that superpower decision making, with whether or not that person someone you're going to continue delegating things to, and how do you walk that line between trying to bring someone along and determining that maybe they're slowing it down?
Yeah, so I think I learned very quickly in my career that I'm a better manager of people who want to develop. And there are people out there who don't want to develop in the way that I see development. And so I have to recognize that. But for me, I have a very low tolerance because I'm looking for the person who's raising their hand in the room because that was me. If I'm sitting around the table and I'm saying, we've got this task to do, I want the direct report or the colleague that's going to be like, I want in on that, whether I've done it before or I haven't done it before. And sometimes I think people think I overlook them for opportunities that they could actually accomplish. And it's more their speed to get to the opportunity. It's not their ability.
Got it.
I love that.
Now, I remember when we met for coffee, back before you got super deep involved in, RM Sherm, Raleigh Metro. And I didn't even finish talking to you about volunteering. You're like, yes. So, you are clearly that one that raises her hand. But sometimes superpowers invert when we're under stress. John, how about that for a segue? Look at that. It's like we've done this 12 times.
Yeah, talk about somebody who's learning on the fly. Will, that was beautiful. Don't worry, I'll cut that out. I'll cut that out.
Cut the compliment out, right? Because that's out of that.
No.
That in there.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
So, you as a leader, whether you're leading people in your organization in a business setting, whether you're leading people in a volunteer setting, there's going to be pressure, there's going to be stress. It may come from work, it may come from personal interactions, but our superpowers can become kryptonite. You chose to write about a couple of things here. Why don't you dive into this, and then I'll pull a question or two out of it.
Yeah, so I had to start with hard to get to know initially because I think I've been told this forever. And so if you meet me for the first time, you probably don't know if I like you or I don't like you, and you might be a tad bit uncomfortable. And so I've had those people in that first interaction where they're like, I'm not sure if you were going to fully engage with me, or I wasn't really sure if you wanted to be friends with me. And the reality is, once you take that next step and I get to know you better and there's a higher level of trust, you find out that I'm really really thoughtful, and my focus is putting people first. And I will put everyone else first before myself. And so there's an advantage to getting to know me, but it's also a bit more challenging in the beginning because I won't give that energy to just everyone.
I like that. And just at a high level, if you remember the OAD, the 2x2, people on the right who are more social tend to trust sooner, but maybe get their heart broken or disappointed because they didn't figure it out first. And folks who are more technical, not everyone, but many of them can be slow to trust, but then fiercely loyal when that trust has been earned.
Yeah, great point.
That would be me, John. Yeah, and the second bullet, I think is something that we talked about earlier in the show when we talked about just being exhausted at the end of the day and the level of adaptability that it takes for me to really think about other people's ideas and their skill sets and their experience while still getting it done. And so I think when you have that high sense of urgency, when you want those results, when you want the action, you're always thinking about who am I going to partner with so that we can get that done. And I've had many people in my career and in life say, I want to partner with you because we're going to take over the world together. But I sometimes forget the people who don't quite want to take over the world. And so sitting down and really understanding what development means to them or how they want to engage, or if they want to be a volunteer and they only want to volunteer 1 hour a month, how do I make that 1 hour a month impactful versus that 30-hour a month volunteer that I'm going to get more excited about because I'm going to say, great, they have their hand up for more. They're going to do more. We're going to act and get greater results.
So a couple of things, John, and thank you, Olivia. Could you go back to the slide where her chart is, please? I want to ask you something, John, and this is an ask to you that, I'll push Olivia to comment on. We talk about that E, right? You got the low E.
Yeah.
Very far to the left there of the median line, which is right over my thinning hair, right there. But the talk, John, she mentioned something, and this is kind of a readout.
Yeah.
10 moment that she's in. Where does that show in that table? Does that show in that emotional control? Does that show in that creativity?
Yeah, I think it shows in a couple of places. So I think that high A is going to be that Olivia's in the room. Sometimes that shows up in the E, but I think I see that in the A here. It is interesting that you said earlier that you have that desire for, how did you call it, validity from other people. You don't always see that in the E or a low E like you have there. But what I see, we call that D, that hook back D, meaning it comes back. And that is someone, oftentimes we see it's with people who they don't have attention on everything, but the things they do have attention on, they know like the 12-digit serial number. Like when you rattled off all the areas of responsibility that you were in, you have that at the tip of your finger because it's important to you. So I think, Will, that's where that comes in. On the versatility for the VL, I wish I could point to that, is right about the center point of a 0 to 60 scale. 25 is close to 30, which is in the middle. Emotional control is towards the middle, so is the creativity. So I'm going to say it's that combination of the high A and high A and D working together.
Thank you for that, and I appreciate the walkthrough. Back to her kryptonite slide. Olivia, you've been through this OAD, leadership traits under stress for your Activate Good board. You've been through this for the Raleigh Metro Society of Human Resource Management board, right? There's 2 boards I just listed, and that's volunteer stuff, and that's not all inclusive of all the things that you do, in addition to your professional responsibilities at a very demanding job. You talk about putting others first, and raising my hand and I'm going to do more. And I like it when others raise their hand and say they want to do more. But how do you get out of the trap with those personality traits and that kryptonite weakness of saying yes and being able to say no, or not me, or not right now, or not at this moment, so that you don't, overextend as a serial overextender, myself, who is working on that personality kryptonite issue constantly. How do you not fall in that trap, or have you figured that out yet?
So I think I'm still in the trap. So I don't want to tell anyone that I'm out of it. And I hate to reuse this podcast name, but I think it's a work in progress.
Nice.
I tell people every day I have to really try to do what's best for me, because it's easier for me to do what's best for others.
Yep.
And I think that you add that to a career that is supposed to be focused on people and other people, not yourself. And so there's probably a lot of HR professionals out there that if you're an HR professional and you have this particular personality and this assessment, you're going to struggle to say no to others. I think that actually what happens is you end up setting boundaries because you're forced to set boundaries. You end up starting to notice mental changes, or you notice physical changes, or you get yourself a little bit further in that trap than you want to, and you have to start to reevaluate. But I think the kryptonite of this particular assessment is that when I have to reevaluate those things, I often start saying no or start changing things with frustration versus that person who, before they get frustrated, can just say, hey, this doesn't work for me.
Before we finish here with her Q&A, John, one more question, if it's okay. And
then I want to make just a little quip here. So I've used this before, but when you're on the airplane and they walk through the emergency stuff, put on masks before you help others. That's what it sounded like you were kind of saying, which is like, if you can't take care of yourself, then you can't do your job of taking care of everybody else. So I find that.
But people in this quadrant are better at telling other people what you're saying, John. So I can give other people that advice, and I probably often do. And sometimes that's because I don't want them to experience things the way I have experienced them, or the way I am experiencing them, versus adjusting my own experience.
Thank you.
Thank you. Last question. Olivia, you've been in the business of human resources and talent and people evaluation for your entire career. You've been through this tool 3 times. And you looked at, tried, and been through other assessments. Any comments on your experiences with OAD and the accuracy of this as compared to other things you've encountered? And this is a vulnerable, honest show, so you don't have to feel like you got to do a commercial for us. But I'd love to. We don't have. You're the first human resources pro, I believe, John, that we've had on here who's tasted this tool and others. I'd love your take on that real quick.
Yeah, so I think it's a really easy assessment survey to complete. And as HR professionals, that's often what we're looking for ourselves and other people, because we want it to be quick. And so I think that the more you overthink it, the more you probably skew your results. So if you just get on there and get it done, you get a more accurate report. I also think at the end of the day, you learn more about yourself than you might learn about others in the process. And I think that's better for us in organizations, because we're often pointing fingers at others. We're saying we don't have a good working relationship with so-and-so, and it must be because so-and-so is the way they are. This particular assessment makes you look at yourself and say, wait a minute, I've always been congratulated for driving for results, but the way in which I may approach driving for results may negatively impact other people. And so if I truly do say I focus on people, then maybe I need to find a balance between driving for results and my communication with others that fall in those different quadrants.
That's really well said. And where Will and I have been focusing our time is on leadership, individual leadership, and the impact on teams, because there are signs that come out of how people's personality traits are perceived by others. And if you can identify your personality traits and optimize them for the group dynamics, that group is going to go farther and faster. And so, yeah, you hit it right on the nose. Thank you. And
John, tee the slide up.
Wait, you want to go back? This one, you ready?
Yeah. Do you think? Yeah. You go back to the other slide. Did we?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Tee her up for that one. This is a new feature as of last week.
That's right. So I moved to it quickly. I think we were kind of into it. So maybe it wasn't a great segue on Will's part, but sorry, on my part. It's my fault. It's always my fault.
I'll take it. I'll own that.
That's the burden I play in this show. But yeah, so this actually is the first week we're using this because we're trying to say, okay, you've been through this, and someone who's been through this 3 times has probably a little more insight to this. But like, how do you see what you've learned about yourself, the gives and takes, the superpowers, kryptonites, applying at home, work, social, and sort of anything outside of a podcast? How do you see that showing up?
How do you use this information going forward?
Or what
So I think work is always the natural thing where you're like, I know how to use it. But I think social and home, you have to think about it a little bit differently. And so social, it has allowed me to become friends with people who were very different than me, but know how to relationally connect with them. And it's also made for more effective board service in 2 of the organizations that I volunteer with. At home, I think it identifies that you're more different than other people around you, which I think can make for a challenge when you go through this type of work. And so you start identifying who you are, and then you look around at your sister and your mom and your dad, and you think, wow, they're in completely different quadrants from me, and this is going to be a daily work in progress. And so I think it's just more self-reflection, some awareness, and adapting to those situations a little bit differently. So what I've actually started doing is I'm the professional when I'm at work, but I've tried to adapt a bit less when I go home, be a bit more me, and recognize that those people in that room probably appreciate that more than me adapting to who they are and not being who I truly am.
I love that. I love that. And I'll tell you, many people in my family have gone through the OAD assessment. And when we were starting out, we were just trying to get used to it. And it's very difficult for me not to go, oh, that's your high E talking. So maybe leave it to work. All right. The train's pulling into the station. Olivia, who's next?
I think you guys should go for Angela Connor. Angela Connor is currently a senior director of storytelling at Bandwidth. I think she has joined the band, fully embraced it, knows a lot about herself and others, but would be interested to get her perspective on this particular assessment now that she's in this new corporate role.
Live TV, sorry. I love it. Will, you know Angela, right? Oh no, everyone froze again. We're back. I stepped off stage to sneeze. Sorry, it was right in the middle of your lovely who's next, and then I came back and y'all were frozen, but it's probably me who was frozen.
We'll see when you watch this.
We'll see. I think you know Angela, is that correct?
Yeah, Angela's great. She and I were on a panel together in the past and spoke at a Young Professionals Networking event.
Wait. You spoke at a Young Professional. Oh, you spoke
as a former Young Professional.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
I came back. It was like a reunion tour.
Giving advice to young professionals, right?
That's better.
It's when you take the van and you go to the old folks' home and you pick them up, right? And you take them out to do something. That's what they did. They picked me up and I got my tapioca and then I sat on the stage and talked a little bit.
That sounds like a good time for you to wrap up, Will.
Oh, am I rapping today? Okay. I got so much power.
You're on the other side, Will.
You're on the power side. Use it.
Well, everyone, thank you so much, Olivia. Great show. Your responses were sharp, to the point, and you covered a lot of ground. Really great content. So we'll put a bow on this episode. Hope everyone enjoyed it. We look forward to seeing you again. Appreciate the support of our Work in Progress podcast. He's John Lane. He's John Lane. No.
Sorry, he's Will Barfield.
He's John Lane. And we are
a work in progress.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone. See you next week. Thanks.
Work in Progress is a podcast presentation of Slipshod Productions, available on LinkedIn and YouTube. Executive produced and starring John Lane and Will Barfield. Talent booking, production, and editing by John Lane. Thanks for watching. See you next week.